Usually when you click buy on some seemingly cheap product from overseas, there's like this expectation of magic.
Oh, yeah.
Sees the low price, you click the button, and a few days later, boom, a box appears on your doorstep. It feels, I don't know, simple, invisible.
Right. It feels almost automatic, like flipping a light switch,
Yeah,
You don't really think about the wiring in the walls until the bulb just doesn't turn on.
exactly. But then a global event happens, or, inflation spikes, and suddenly that $20 gadget takes 3 months to arrive.
Or the shipping costs more than the item itself.
Yeah, and that invisible magic trick just shatters. We're suddenly forced to look at the incredibly complex, often chaotic reality of how things actually get to us. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're using the APCS logistics framework to figure out how companies actually pull off this magic trick. We're going to look at why things cost what they do and how moving boxes from point A to point B is secretly a company's ultimate competitive weapon.
Yeah, we are moving way past the consumer view of just, waiting for a delivery truck.
Yeah.
We're unpacking a multi-trillion-dollar chess game that dictates the health of the entire global economy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can understand how logistics makes or breaks a company's bank account, we have to clear up some terminology.
Definitely. There's a lot of confusion there.
Right. I hear logistics and supply chain management used interchangeably in the news all the time, but the APCS framework is very clear that they are distinct things.
Very distinct.
Supply chain management, or SCM, is the giant umbrella. It equals suppliers, plus production planning, plus logistics, plus customers.
Right, so logistics is just the core engine inside that larger vehicle. It is the physical movement and storage of goods.
Just the physical stuff.
Exactly. It encompasses the warehousing, the transportation networks, and the inventory management. Supply chain management is the broader integration that sits on top of all that.
Got it.
SCM adds the overarching strategic planning, the customer relationship management, and supplier relationship management.
I was trying to visualize this while preparing, and I keep coming back to this biological analogy.
Well, I like those. Let's hear it.
So, if a modern corporation is a human body, supply chain management is the whole central nervous system. It's the brain doing the strategic planning. It's the senses monitoring the market for what customers want.
Okay, yeah.
But logistics is the cardiovascular system. It is the heart and the veins, literally pumping the lifeblood, the physical products, to exactly where they need to go.
That's a perfect way to look at it. Because if the cardiovascular system stops pumping, the brain's brilliant strategy doesn't even matter.
The whole body just shuts down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we look at the sheer macroeconomic scale of this system, it is really hard to overstate. In 2022, U.S. logistics costs hit $2.32 trillion.
Wait, a trillion? With a T?
With a T. That made up 9.1% of the entire U.S. gross domestic product for the year.
That is wild.
It is. And historically, from about 2013 to 2021, that number hovered in the much lower, 7 to 8% range. So a jump to 9.1% is a seismic shift. Wow. And for you, the listener, understanding that dry statistic actually explains so much about your daily life.
How so?
Well, that surge in the cost of moving goods around the planet was a foundational driver of the 8% inflation rate that hit the grocery store and the gas pump. The cost of moving the thing began eating into the value of the thing itself.
Which perfectly sets up this concept of landed cost.
Yes, landed cost is huge here.
Because when I'm looking at, say, a ceramic mug on a wholesale website, and the manufacturer in Asia says they'll sell it to me for 50 cents, my brain immediately thinks, great, I'll sell it for $5 and make a fortune.
Right, because you are just looking at the manufacturing cost. You're completely ignoring the landed cost.
Which is the trap.
Exactly. Landed cost is the true final financial burden of a product once it arrives at the destination where a customer actually wants it.
Okay, so what goes into that?
It is that 50-cent product cost, plus the ocean freight to get it across the Pacific, plus the customs duties at the port, plus the truck to get it to your warehouse.
Wow.
And don't forget the rent for the shelf it sits on until it actually sells.
Right, and ceramic mugs are heavy and fragile, so I'm paying a premium on shipping weight, and I have to factor in the cost of, the 10% of them that break in transit.
Precisely.
By the time that 50-cent mug is sitting in my warehouse in Ohio, the landed cost might be $4. My massive profit margin just vanishes because of logistics.
This is exactly why companies agonize over where to place their manufacturing facilities. Logistics is composed of fixed costs, like owning a massive warehouse, And variable costs, like the diesel fuel for the delivery trucks.
Yeah, fuel prices are always all over the place.
Right. So if a company relies heavily on overseas manufacturing, they're highly exposed to those variable costs. A sudden spike in global oil prices or a shortage of shipping containers will cause their landed costs to skyrocket overnight.
So they try to bring production closer to home, onshoring or nearshoring, right?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, by moving the origin point closer to the demand point, say, shifting production from Southeast Asia to Mexico to serve the United States, a company drastically shortens the physical distance.
Makes sense.
This slashes variable costs like ocean freight and fuel, and it insulates the company from global shipping crises.
But the trade-off is that you are likely moving into a region with much higher labor costs or stricter environmental regulations.
Exactly, which drives up your fixed manufacturing costs.
It's a constant tug of war between the cost to make it and the cost to move it.
It really is. And because logistics is such a massive financial burden, corporate finance teams traditionally view it as just a giant bleeding expense, a cost center.
Just a black hole for money.
Right. Their instinct is to demand that logistics managers slash budgets relentlessly.
Like if the landed cost is eating the profit, just tell the logistics guys to find cheaper trucks. But treating logistics purely as a cost center to be starved is a massive trap. The APIS-US framework argues that logistics isn't just an expense, it actively creates value.
Yes, it is the cohesive glue holding sales, procurement, and production together.
Right. And if you weaponize it correctly, it actually drives competitive advantage.
Absolutely. There are three primary strategies companies use to turn logistics from a cost center into a competitive weapon: efficiency, agility, and resilience.
Okay, let's unpack these, starting with efficiency. This seems straightforward. Just be the absolute low-cost provider in your industry.
It is about high inventory turnover and ruthless elimination of waste. The pinnacle of logistics efficiency is a technique called cross-docking.
Cross-docking. Okay, how does that work?
Imagine a massive distribution facility. An inbound semi-truck arrives from a manufacturer packed to the roof with pallets of, say, shampoo.
Okay, lots of shampoo.
Instead of unloading those pallets, driving them into the depths of a warehouse, and storing them on racks for 3 months, the pallets are unloaded right onto the receiving dock.
And then what?
Workers immediately break them down and drive them straight across the floor to the shipping dock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there they are, loaded onto 5 different outbound trucks, headed to 5 different retail stores.
So the product never touches a storage rack.
Never.
It literally crosses the dock and leaves. You completely eliminate the cost of storing it, the cost of the massive building required to hold it, and all the labor required to put it away and pick it back up again a month later.
0 storage costs. That is peak efficiency. But efficiency requires predictability.
Which the real world is not known for.
Exactly. What happens when the market is unpredictable? That brings us to the second strategy, agility. This is the ability to ramp operations up or down quickly based on volatile demand.
Now, I'm stuck on agility. The reading highlights a concept called postponement.
Yes. Postponement.
If I'm a company making laptop power adapters, doesn't building different versions for the US, Europe, and the UK inherently slow down the supply chain? How is manufacturing all these variations agile?
Well, it is agile because you don't manufacture the final variations up front.
Oh, I see.
Postponement means you delay putting the final touches on a product until the absolute last minute. Instead of guessing that you will sell 10,000 UK plugs and 10,000 US plugs, you manufacture 20,000 generic power bricks.
Okay, generic bricks.
You ship those unfinished bricks to a warehouse. They sit there as neutral inventory. Then, when a customer in London actually places an order on your website, a warehouse worker takes a generic brick, snaps on the UK prong adapter, puts it in a box, and ships it.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant. You aren't guessing what finished goods to stock.
Right, no guessing.
If the European market suddenly tanks and the US market booms, you aren't stuck with a warehouse full of useless European adapters. You just start snapping US prongs onto your generic base unit.
Exactly. By postponing the final assembly, you drastically reduce the risk of holding obsolete inventory.
Right.
You remain flexible to market demand without incurring massive costs.
That makes total sense.
And then the third strategy is resilience.
Which, after the supply chain shocks of the last few years, resilience is top of mind for everyone.
Oh, without a doubt. Resilience is the ability to withstand and recover from disruptions.
Yeah.
Port strikes, natural disasters, geopolitical conflicts.
How do you build that into a supply chain?
You build it through geographic diversification. If all your inventory is sitting in one mega warehouse in Los Angeles and the port workers go on strike, your company is completely frozen.
Yeah, you're dead in the water.
But a resilient logistics network splits that inventory across Los Angeles, Savannah, and New Jersey. It costs more in overhead, obviously, but it guarantees survival when a single node goes down.
Got it. And these three strategies tie into a specific value framework the APCS material uses called the ERS model.
Right, ERS.
Effective, efficient, relevant, and sustainable.
Yeah, so effective is the bare minimum. It just means the logistics network actually succeeds in getting the product to the customer safely.
Like, it works.
Exactly. Efficient means it does so at the least total cost and with minimal waste.
Now, relevant is fascinating to me because consumer expectations change so much.
Oh, drastically.
Like, a logistics network that delivered catalogs in 2 weeks was totally relevant in 1995. But today, relevant means adapting to demands for next day or even same-day delivery.
Yep, the bar has moved.
And then sustainable is that growing mandate for environmental and social responsibility. Cutting carbon emissions, reducing packaging waste.
And to balance effective, efficient, relevant, and sustainable, logistics managers have to manage some pretty brutal trade-offs. The most classic trade-off in the entire field is the tension between inventory carrying cost and the cost of lost sales.
I like to think of it like a massive financial tug of war.
That's a good analogy.
On one side, you have your inventory carrying cost. Like, if I rent a massive warehouse and fill it to the roof with 10,000 winter coats, I am bleeding money.
So much money.
I'm paying exorbitant rent, I'm paying insurance on the coats, I'm paying security to guard them, and I'm taking the risk that winter coats go completely out of style next year, and I'm just stuck with them.
But on the other side of the rope is the cost of lost sales. This is the financial penalty of a stockout.
Which hurts.
It hurts a lot. If you try to save money on rent by only stocking 10 coats in a tiny closet, you keep your carrying costs near zero. But when a massive blizzard hits and 1,000 customers show up with credit cards in hand, you have nothing to sell them.
So they go to your competitor.
Exactly. They go to your competitor, and you lose thousands of dollars in immediate profit, plus their future loyalty.
So you pull the rope back and forth. You want just enough coats to handle the blizzard, but not a single coat more, so you don't waste money storing it. Finding that sweet spot is the entire game.
Which brings up the concept of basic logistics service. Companies have to clearly define what their baseline commitment to the customer actually is in order to find that sweet spot.
See, I have a real issue with this term.
Oh yeah, why is that?
When a company proudly states in a boardroom that their goal is basic logistics service, it sounds like a fancy way of setting the bar intentionally low so they don't fail. It just sounds like a commitment to mediocrity.
I completely understand why it sounds like a lack of ambition. But in logistics, overpromising is a fatal disease.
Really? A fatal disease?
Truly. If your company promises every single customer hyper-fast, white glove, next-day delivery for every single item from a paperclip to a refrigerator, your logistics costs will bankrupt the company in a month.
Ah, so it's more of a defensive strategy.
It is a foundation promise. Basic logistics service establishes a reliable, mathematically modeled, and cost-controlled baseline for all customers.
Okay.
It dictates a specific guarantee, like we will always maintain a 95% inventory availability rate, and we guarantee 3-day delivery. It is about absolute reliability. You control the baseline so that you preserve your resources.
Right. And because you didn't bankrupt yourself trying to overnight paperclips, you actually have cash in reserve for emergencies.
Precisely.
Like if your top VIP client calls and says their factory line is going to shut down in 8 hours because they are missing a specific microchip, your logistics network has the budget and the agility to literally charter a private plane and get it there. Yes.
If you tried to provide private plane service to everyone, you could do it for no one.
Defining that baseline is exactly how you balance service and cost. But here is the critical pivot. If you create value by balancing those costs, what happens if you measure the costs incorrectly?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you measure them wrong, you destroy the entire system.
You really do.
And this gets us into the gritty reality of logistics accounting. Because how a company measures its money dictates exactly how its managers will behave on the warehouse floor.
Traditional accounting is how most businesses operate, and it is honestly toxic to logistics.
Toxic? How so?
Traditional accounting aggregates costs by department. The warehouse has a budget for salaries. The transportation team has a budget for fuel. The administrative team has a budget for office supplies.
It creates silos.
Massive silos.
A manager looks at their specific bucket of money and does everything in their power to hoard it. But a single customer order doesn't care about silos.
Nope, not at all. An order cuts across the warehouse, the packaging department, and the transportation team. Logistics accounting requires a totally different approach, right?
Yes, it uses activity-based costing. You have to know the exact cost to pick, pack, and ship a single unit of a product, cutting across all those different departments.
Because if you stick to traditional siloed accounting, you fall into the most dangerous trap in supply chain management: sub-optimization.
Yes, this raises an important question about how departments interact.
Sub-optimization is such a heavy corporate word, but the mechanism behind it is fascinating. It's when a solution looks brilliant from a narrow departmental point of view, but it inadvertently damages the overall company.
Let's run a scenario to make it real. A warehouse manager is facing a performance review. Under traditional accounting, he's judged entirely on whether he stayed under his monthly labor budget.
Okay, classic metric.
Toward the end of the month, he's running hot, so he institutes a strict ban on all overtime. Nobody stays past 5 p.m.
From his silo, he's a hero. He saved the warehouse budget.
But look at the cascading failure he just triggered.
Right.
Because the workers couldn't stay an extra hour to finish loading the outbound trailers, the trucks leave the yard the next morning instead of that night. Because the trucks leave late, they miss their scheduled delivery window at a major client's facility. The client's manufacturing line runs out of parts and halts production for 3 hours.
And then the fallout hits.
Exactly. The furious client calls your CEO and cancels a $5 million annual contract.
So the warehouse manager saved $500 in overtime, and in doing so, destroyed $5 million in revenue. That is sub-optimization.
And the only way logistics professionals combat sub-optimization is by relentlessly applying a philosophy called total cost of ownership, or TCO.
Right, TCO, which basically dictates that the sticker price you see on an invoice is just the tip of the iceberg.
Just the very tip.
You cannot make a decision based on the purchase price alone. You have to factor in pre-transaction costs, like the time your team spends researching and vetting a new supplier.
Yes, and you have to look at post-transaction costs.
Right, like the money you spend processing returns, fixing defective items, or handling customer complaints.
A classic case study in the APCS material regarding offshore outsourcing perfectly illustrates how TCO changes decision-making.
Oh, the Calicoto and Robinson research. This is the ultimate reality check for finance teams.
It really is.
So, a company looks at their domestic manufacturing and realizes they can outsource production to a facility in Asia and save 70% on labor costs.
Huge number.
A traditional finance director sees that 70% savings and immediately signs the contract.
But a logistics professional applies total cost of ownership and sees the hidden iceberg.
What's under the water?
Well, when you move production halfway across the globe, your transportation costs skyrocket. You are now paying for massive ocean freight and complicated customs brokerage. In this specific case study, the transportation costs alone increased by 20%.
Wow. And it goes deeper than that. Because your factory is now 12 time zones away, you can't just drive down the street to check on production.
Nope. You have to hire quality control inspectors in Asia. You get to fly your executives back and forth. You have language barriers that lead to manufacturing errors, which increases your defect rate.
All of that adds up fast.
Yeah. And you have to hold more safety stock in your home country because transit takes 4 weeks instead of 4 days. All of that administrative and control friction increase costs by another 20%.
So let's do the math. You saved 70% on labor, but you lost 20% to transportation and another 20% to administration, quality control, and inventory holding.
So the net savings is only 30%. Now, saving 30% is still a solid business win.
Oh, for sure. It still makes economic sense.
But it is a very different reality than the 70% windfall the company originally budgeted for. If you don't calculate the logistics costs tied to a decision, you are just flying blind.
And that TCO calculation is the absolute foundation of the make-or-buy analysis. Every single day, companies look at their supply chain and ask, do we build this capability internally, or do we buy it from an external provider? Like deciding whether to buy your own fleet of delivery trucks versus hiring a third-party logistics provider, a 3PL.
Exactly.
If you just compare the monthly lease of a truck to the monthly invoice of a 3PL, you will make the wrong choice. You have to use TCO.
You have to.
Because if you own the trucks, you have to pay for the maintenance, you have to manage driver turnover, you have to buy the insurance, and you take on the huge liability if a truck gets in an accident.
Conversely, if you hire the 3PL, you have to factor in the hidden costs of integrating your IT systems with theirs and the risk that they might drop the ball and damage your brand reputation.
So logistics is really a relentless dedication to seeing the entire board, not just the single piece you want to move.
That is the perfect way to summarize it.
Well, we have covered some serious ground today. We started by redefining logistics, moving away from the idea of just trucks and warehouses, and looking at it as the physical cardiovascular system of the global economy.
Which it is.
We explored how companies use efficiency, agility, and resilience to turn logistics into a competitive weapon, using tools like cross-docking and postponement.
And we examined the ERS model, ensuring operations are effective, efficient, relevant, and sustainable.
Right. And we broke down the vital importance of total cost of ownership to avoid that nasty trap of sub-optimization.
We covered a lot.
So, to you, the listener, the next time you are sitting on your couch, you click buy on your phone, and a package magically appears the very next day, you now know the immense trillions of dollars balancing act happening behind the scenes to pull off that illusion.
It's no small feat.
But before we wrap up, I want to toss it over for one final thought. We've talked extensively about trade-offs today. What is the most massive trade-off looming on the horizon for modern logistics?
Well, look closely at the tension within that ERS model we discussed. Specifically, the tension between being relevant and being sustainable.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Right now, consumer expectations demand hyper-fast, highly customized deliveries. Same-day delivery, 1-hour delivery.
Yeah, we want it now.
To be relevant, logistics networks are pushed to their absolute maximum speed. This requires putting more half-empty trucks on the road, utilizing less consolidated freight, and burning massive amounts of energy to achieve that velocity.
So speed requires brute force.
It does, but simultaneously, there is a vital mandate for environmental sustainability. Governments, and actually those very same consumers, want lower carbon emissions and highly optimized green supply chains.
Right.
The physics and the economics of logistics dictate that the need for hyperspeed and the need to be deeply green are on a direct collision course.
They can't both win?
They cannot both exist at their extremes. Which mandate will ultimately win out in the supply chains of tomorrow? Will consumers accept waiting a week for a package to reduce emissions? Or will the demand for instant gratification override our environmental goals?
Wow. That is the ultimate question. The future of how we get our stuff is entirely up for grabs. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.